option to opt out of a survey?
We have, I'm going to have a little trouble remembering the iterations of where we have been because we've been talking about this one for quite some time. We have, most recently, our parents can opt out, but they are not required to opt in on all types of surveys. But so you can always opt out of surveys. Always, no matter what it is. It's the distinction of whether we require an opt-in for participation or we wait for an opt-out of participation.
One more time, I've said this a lot. We do not play well at 10:15, and most of us got here a little after 4, and we had a lengthy closed session. Excellent. But
Sure did. Yes, sir.
this is we're hitting some tough areas here, and I appreciate Ms. Barnhart saying that we could discuss it, that I think we need to discuss a little more to make sure that it's all sinking in and we understand the parameters or lack of. I support parent rights. If a parent doesn't want somebody to do something, they can opt out. And that eliminates a lot of issues. I'm not sure about making a policy that makes it a little either harder or more difficult. But I'd like, again, to add this to our discussion. We just need.
Yes, sir. Okay,
I
Mr.
feel like
Smith.
we're being shoved and pushed to do things at the last minute of the last hour. And it's been a long night, and I just think a little clearer and maybe share a little easier with each other when we're not all tired.
All right, Ms. Mason.
The concern with this policy for me has always been that it's been opt-out, which means that there's that implied consent. And you have parents who are working, you have single parents, you have people who don't always see all the paperwork all the time, and if their kids are participating in a survey that they are not aware of, that they didn't get the chance, maybe they missed that one paper, and there's information shared about their child that they didn't give permission to or opt out of, that's problematic for me. So that's why I'm supporting this change.
Okay. Ms. Walker.
So I feel like a lot of this coming over the horizon was based on the survey that we worked on in the Title IX committee that made national news, that docked some of our employees over, that really upset me because we're in a district where we want to know how our students are doing. We want to make sure that we are aware of how they're feeling, whether it's being bullied or harassed, because of their gender or whatever. And so I'm a little bit concerned that this is an overcorrection of something of that nature, and it's going to cause problems for other surveys. And I guess, I'm with Mr. McManus as far as having the conversation, because I don't know what that's going to do maybe time will tell if this gets changed and it does make a really, it causes problems, for getting information that we absolutely we need for things. So, I agree. And I will add also that we didn't get these at agenda review. I could have come up with a lot more questions if I'd have been provided with these a lot sooner. And we didn't have these to look at. I would have been able to ask questions that I'm feeling a little pushed on it, but I guess, I'll probably be on the losing side of the vote.
Any other?
I'll push back because I have given the information, so I don't know where the disconnect, and whoever I need to talk to, I'm happy to do it to make sure that everybody has the stuff. But after the policy meeting, I submitted these as the policies for consensus that were up. So there's no hidden secretive thing going on. These were what's happened. I've been given a lot of slack because we keep going back and forth because the reality is there's a difference of opinion. And so we have a list of protected topics, and those topics include political affiliations or beliefs of students, mental health and psychological problems, sex behavior, illegal, antisocial, self-incriminating, or demeaning behavior, critical appraisals of other individuals whom they have close family relationships. These are things that if we're going to ask in-depth questions and we need that data to inform parents of what's happening. These are intense conversations for a variety of levels, because then what do we in turn do with the data? That's the other part that, is not being emphasized here, but we did write into protocols and procedures that the board will be informed of the implementation as the results and the different things that we are going to be doing as a district with the surveys, because I think that's the missing piece too, that was not openly discussed. And so these are a few things that when we talk about this, so it is not a hidden, secretive thing, and I'm going to get a little defensive because I have been very forthcoming with the intent behind it of being transparent to provide a survey window of making the parents aware that they have an opportunity to see it beforehand, as well as the board being informed of what we do after. And so I'm fine with passing this survey. I do understand it's late. I do understand there's a mix of opinion, and I think it's going to be a split vote.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make one more response, please.
I'm sorry, you've already spoken twice on this.
I've already spoken twice. Okay.
Weber?
So I'm happy to give some context, just if it helps with the board's decision. Your current policy, as it reads now, without any of these changes, tracks the PPRA federal law, and that requires prior written consent before implementing a survey involving one of these protected topics, one or more, if it's federally funded. The key change that's being proposed here would be to extend that so that prior written consent is required for any survey involving a protected topic, regardless of funding source. That's really the key distinction. Instead of just federally funded, this would be any survey, any funding source that involves a protected topic. It does not require prior written consent for surveys that do not involve protected topics.
Have a first and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Ms. Bowie, if you'd call the roll, please. Again, the motion now is to accept policy 4720 as provided for us.
Mr. McManus?
No.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Wildebohr?
Yes.
Ms. Barnhart?
Yes.
Ms. Craybill?
No.
And Ms. Walker?
No.
Policy 4720 passes 4-3. Ms. Craybill, our next was the call to audience.
Yes, sir. So, that one it's not a policy, even though we reference it. What you'll see in Assembly for us to look at is, basically the rules of decorum that Ms. Walker had developed and the board, approved, but it's not codified anywhere. We do mention policy 2310 in this document, but we really need to address policy 2310 if we're going to make changes to it here. If we look in the first paragraph, the intro paragraph where it says per board policy 2300 board meetings, the New Hanover County Board of Education, it says May regular board meeting. I'm pretty certain we meant to say Board of Education regular board meeting will be held on the first Tuesday of each month. And our policy 2300 does not state anywhere in there about the time. So I think that might have just been something when we pulled it off of the call to the audience that we pulled off that page. So I think that we need to address that. The title is really the New Hanover County Board of Education call to the audience, procedures and then rules of decorum. So it's a pretty major change, and it's one that we talked about a little bit last year and decided not to do. And so I just wanted to make sure that this needed to be made sure that we are all together on it, not in a consensus item, because it's talking about having a much larger call to the audience sign-up window, and it is calling for a lottery system using a random number generator. And I'm not saying it's bad, I just wanted to make sure that our board really understood what we were doing. Individuals will be notified if they're selected to speak. The lottery system will be used to determine the order of which people speak and they will be noted. If you move down to the second paragraph, we struck out those that sign up in person will be eligible to speak based on the remaining time available. We're striking that out. One thing that I would like for us to also consider is the last line under respectful behavior. Approaching the dais without invitation by anyone other than staff is prohibited. And I want to strike out the without invitation, and because people in the back don't get to hear the conversation of the invite. Several of us have had things left at our desk anonymously, and that's concerning to me, that people can come up and have access to it. And then call the audience speeches, the first bullet. Speaking time is determined based on the number of speakers who sign up at each meeting on a first-come, first-served basis. So everything else is good, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on this. The proposal is a lottery system for 20 participants, not 30, so that we can keep under our hour.
Ms. Bradford? Thank you, Ms. Crable.
This was developed through the communications department. This is their suggestion. We said in the policy committee meeting where we voted on it and passed it, that we would try this for like maybe 90 days. It's 20 participants plus the 5 that do at the door, so it takes us to 25 instead of 35. The system's broken. This is a way to try to fix it. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. I move that we pass it as it is as written, and yeah, period.
Okay, we have a motion to pass the, yeah, yes, sir. Let me get a second first, and we'll get your question, then we'll have plenty of time to talk. So we have a first, do we have a second to pass the New Hanover County Board call to
Second.
audience?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
Can I please make a clarification? What is the it?
Mr. McManus is going to speak next. Okay. Yes, sir.
Maybe it's my eyes. Where does it talk about approaching the dais? I don't.
Respectful behavior, last bullet.
Approaching the dais without invitation by anyone other than staff is prohibited. Okay. Ms. Craybill.
Yeah, I am unclear what we're calling this. This is not a policy that we're looking at. This is a document that we created. So, I think we need to be clear. We're not voting on a policy. We're voting on a document, a working document that we created. So I think we need to say that in the.
I think we can say that because it's a procedure. It says right on.
This procedure,
It says
exactly.
procedure. Ms. Mason.
I actually have some concerns myself about it. The reduction of the number of voices. It's already hard enough for people to get on there sometimes, depending on the topic. And if we reduce it down to 20, that gives less people the opportunity. There's also concern that people are very tech savvy at this point. And how are we going to prevent groups of individuals from organizing and just spamming it and overloading and getting as many in there and preventing
If I could
anybody
ask-
else from speaking?
Thank you, Ms. Mason. I'm going to actually ask Mr. Smith if you would respond to that, please.
Sure. So I think it's a valid question. AI-driven manipulation of a lottery system, I think, is what we're talking about. And I think it's valid, and I think it's worth consideration, and it's worth testing, and I won't refute that it's a possibility. It's also a possibility that you could do something similar with email or something similar with automated phone calls to you right now currently. So it's a matter of technical expertise, will, all of those things. I don't want to put Dawn on the spot, but I'll tell you, her team swats off cyber threats daily with regard to what's coming into our systems and our emails, and perhaps you've been in receipt of it. So I think we'd have to look at that as an option, and it's something we'd closely monitor. I think it's a fair question, and the answer is I don't know what that's going to look like, but we don't know what it's going to look like with regard to any of these measures either. I'll also add that Dawn and I, in looking at similar versions in other counties, there are address verification options or county residency verification options. I know the policy committee and the board didn't want to look at that previous, but there are I am a human and I live here type of options that could additionally be implemented, where the board want to look at that.
Ms. Bradford?
I can address the 20 participants. Our policy states now that that's going to, call to audience will be limited to 1 hour. Okay, let's do some simple math. It's late and I don't do math, but if you have 30 times 2, what do you get? 1 hour. We have another 5 that sign up at the door, times 2, what do you get? 10 minutes. So we've got a minimum of 70 minutes. We're already violating our policy. So we have to change something. The idea with this was we would come in under, tonight we had 23 people sign up through the system, 1 at the door, and 2 people didn't show. So it's not that big of a deal. It's just a mental thing that you're limiting people. We'll try it. If it doesn't work, then we'll do something else.
Okay, any other? Ms. Barnhart?
Yeah, I mean, and my thought process was this, and I'm going to throw out the word equitable. First come, first served basis. Is that equitable? Is that how we organize our choice schools? No. How do we organize them? We do it by a lottery system. People apply and they get selected randomly because we try to be as fair as we can. And if that's not how we should be operating those, I mean, I think there was a debacle with one when it opened up years ago, but just out of curiosity, if I'm going to throw that word out there, that. The other thing is we have staff that are unable to sign up. So the idea that Josh had suggested us to talk about was to open it up right after the agenda review, where people are listening and hearing that they can sign up from that point on, and more people can sign up throughout the week. So it's a longer process. Open it to more people with the potential of having access to a translator or an interpreter if necessary, providing that just creating more of an open door, because as Mr. McManus says, I try to take as much as the input from what we said in the dais and brainstormed into policy. But we constantly hear from the same group of people, so how can we broaden the net? And that was the conversation that was had, and this was the idea that was brought to the table. The suggestion from my 2 colleagues about the 30 to the 20 was because we are in violation of our policy, and to make that right. So that was the premise behind it. The other feedback, the call to audience is not the most effective way to communicate to the board, in my opinion, because we're not able to sit down and have a conversation and actually hash out some details. Because I think when you have a 2-way dialogue, you're going to get a lot more accomplished addressing the problem. But what has happened over the past few years, and we've seen it all across the country, is the call to audience is a way that people tell us the solution that has to happen. We're not allowed to address them. We're not allowed to brainstorm the problem and address the issues at hand. We just listen. And I'm still wanting that opportunity for people who want to do that. However, I think the town halls that we've started implementing, and I'd love it to be a roundtable discussion, is going to be a more effective tool for us to communicate with our community of actual problems and brainstorming solutions.
Mr. McManus?
Well, town halls are not working because nobody shows up. But I agree with you, and I agree with this. We need to try it. The only thing I don't agree with, if Melissa and I want to talk to Peter, and we don't want to talk to him in front of 50 people, and we say, come up here, then I think we have the right for them to come up here. I know, that's what, I'm supporting that. But I think this is worth a try, because I think we do need to make it fair.
Thank you.
As possible.
Ms. Mason and Ms. Walker?
Respectfully, I would have to disagree. I think that first come, first serve is fair. And I think that we had a fantastic teacher come up and give us a great idea at the beginning of this meeting, and that is a teacher voice. If we have that as an already implemented component of our meetings, I think that would solve some of the problems of the teachers being unable to sign up. I think we could also separate the signups. We could have them at different times. I am not comfortable with the lottery system. I think that it's too easy and there's too many unknowns for me to be able to trust that it's going to be completely unbiased, that there's not going to be anybody sneaking in or overwhelming the system.
Ms. Walker, thank you.
Well, I will tell you, as somebody that's been on the other side for almost over 3 years now, I know what it feels like to just be shouted out or cursed at by even some of you guys up here now. It's not fun, no. But at the same time, people have a right to say what they want to say, and I respect that. And I feel like the people that sign up, and I'm not going to say, I mean, people sign up that their intent is to want to be here to say what they have to say. To me, that shows the desire to do it. And so doing a lottery, I don't see how that's going to change a lot. I mean, I know I'm not unhappy with the same people. They have the freedom to say what they want to say. Let's just say that. And I don't think a lottery is going to change it. For example, today we had 23 sign up. And it was open probably till this afternoon. So I don't see the problem with the system now. I don't have had anybody complain to me about it. But I mean, I just don't think limiting people and doing some lotteries, not that I don't think it's a great idea, Joss, it's not that. It's just I've not seen it being an issue. So I just disagree. I don't think it's worth doing.
Ms. Cribble, I'm going to go and then I'll let you go. And just to let you know, I've talked to several teachers. First off, the idea that was given tonight was a wonderful idea, and I'm 100%, that's why I brought it to everybody. I was like, wow, this is awesome. But that was for teachers a year. That's not for every, every teacher to be able to come and speak. And I've heard from several teachers, as I go to schools and stuff, where they have said, I really was hoping to come talk to you guys about budget. I really want to come talk to you about budget, but I'm unable to come to talk to you because at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning, I'm teaching, and I don't feel comfortable saying, well then, step away from your teaching or have somebody else do that so you can do it. So that's just to answer some of those questions. Ms. Craybill.
So just to kind of recap a little bit, I'm not opposed to what we're doing here because I am, and I've said this for 3 years, is that our policy says an hour and we go over, every single time. And we have the longest comment period of any people in any board in the state. So, and if we just look tonight, we had 21 speakers and it took us 50 minutes. So just, do the math on that one. We go over all the time. But what I would like to do at this point is amend to, somebody made a motion.
Pat, and I second.
Pat, okay, so the motion was to adopt this for, as it's written. So I would like to amend that motion to say that we adopt this policy for a period of 3 months so that we have a trial date, and so that we don't just keep going endlessly, that we make a conscious decision to evaluate that. So amend the motion to say, accept as presented, except with those changes. We got to fix that first paragraph,
Yeah.
to make it what we want it to be.
Yeah.
And then for a trial period of 3 months. Huh?
Okay, we have a motion to amend.
People come to the meetings in the
Second.
summer. Yeah.
Do I hear a second?
I'm happy to change the 3 months if somebody wants to make it longer.
I'll second that for 3 months.
I think 3 months, that's 3
First
meetings.
and second, is there further discussion on that?
Mr. Wilbur, did you include cleaning this up? Because this is, this a whole bunch of stuff in here. And I don't know why Hanover County Schools is wiped out on there. I don't know why.
First, we have a second. Is there any discussion on the amendment to the motion? If not, Ms. Bowie, would you call roll? And again, this is to accept it as written with the clarification on the first paragraph, to accept this procedure for a 3-month period. Ms. Bowie.
Ms. Mason,
No.
Ms. Bradford,
Yes.
Mr. Wildebohr,
Yes.
Ms. Barnhart,
Yes.
Ms. Craybill,
Yes.
Ms. Walker,
No.
and Mr. McManus.
Yes.
Passes 5-2. And that is the end of, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
That was approval of the amendment.
Oh, I'm
Now
sorry.
you need
Yes,
to wind it down.
I'm trying to push through. I apologize.
I mean-
So that was the amendment, which adds the 3 months in and clears up that top. So now we are voting on the procedure as written with the amendment. Ms. Bowie, would you call roll? Is there any discussion? No. Ms. Bowie, would you call roll, please?
Ms. Bradford,
Yes.
Mr. Wildebohr,
Yes.
Ms. Barnhart,
Yes.
Ms. Craybill,
Yes.
Ms. Walker,
No.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Mason,
No.
Again, passes the same number, 5-2. Carrying on to our new business, thank you, board members. We're carrying on to our new business, the ELA adoption.
So, I am bringing you our ELA adoption for your approval and vote tonight. And I just want to tell you how we got here and what we're asking you to adopt. Oh, sorry. Okay. So I'll just begin with a quick rationale, process of the selection, what the recommendation is, and leave some time for questions and discussions if you have them. Is it me? Sorry. So when we think about curriculum, we know it ties right into our strategic plan. It is based on everything we do, and it ties strongly with our academic performance. Our strategic plan, 90% in 2027, we're going to have 90% of our graduates prepared for higher education or meaningful employment, along with our third graders, 90% of them reading at or above grade level. I'm sorry, because I was trying to click, thank you, you can click the next one. It's not working for me, I'm sorry. So why do we need a new curriculum? Our teachers have voiced that we needed something. Our current curriculum is a company called Schoolwide. So as you can see, there's not any teacher buy-in. Our students don't actually have the text in their hand, and the instructional approaches that are aligned with science of reading are actually not, it does not align with the science of reading.
Right there.
There is no online component and very little professional development. So what was this process? How do we get to the point to say, we need a new curriculum, and it's this curriculum? So first, we surveyed our teachers and principals. We started there, of course. And from those surveys, we then took the information and worked to determine a rubric of what will we look for in a new curriculum. And once we had that rubric, we did an RFP process, and that's a request for proposal. Our teachers looked through those bids. We had, you're going to see later, about 14 submissions, and our teachers looked through those bids and reviewed those bids. From those bids, and that committee determined the finalists. And then we had the finalists, and we actually had fairs and sent the samples to the schools to allow the teachers to dig into and actually look at this process. They also had the opportunity to do demo lessons. So, and from that, they looked at those and determined what was the best curriculum for our process, for our district. So once the teachers and the principals looked at the curriculum and determined the best curriculums for our process, we then worked with finance and technology to make sure that we had alignment with the different platforms, and we did the process correctly. After that, of course, we shared this, we had an open, fair, or time for you, Board of Education members, and I'm here with you now asking you to approve this. So after we approve this, after we approve this curriculum, the next step is to actually get the materials in the hands of our schools. And we're doing it now because our timeline actually will allow for our year-round schools to have their material in a timely manner. That is one thing that I know all of you've heard, that sometimes our year-round schools feel forgotten when it comes to things to this nature because we don't have the materials until August or July and they've already started school. So that will not happen with this. Along with that, we will also be having parent information sessions. You know, with any curriculum, it is important to have transparency, and you're going to see some other areas where we're going to talk about how parents are going to actually know what is being taught in this curriculum. And of course, the implementation process. So, what did the teachers say? You see here, 90% of the teachers that teach ELA in our district responded. We not only talk to classroom teachers, we talk to EC teachers, AIG teachers, our instructional staff. We wanted every voice to be heard. And as you can see, 90% of our teachers said, we need something in additional to school-wide. It does not meet the needs of our students. So what did the teachers say they wanted? They wanted a curriculum that is aligned to the standard course of study. Of course, it connects to the science of reading. And think about the science of reading are those best practices that we know how students learn. Our standards are what we have to teach them, and our curriculum is how we're going to teach them. And we know we've already invested a lot of time, money, and energy in the science of reading. And so now we give the teachers the resources to actually be able to put that in effect and make it work. Another thing they said was PD. We need some quality PD. You know, we so many times we throw things at our teachers and we don't give them time or the support to really dig into it and learn this. And you're going to see we've embedded quality PD for our teachers because they deserve that. So the RFP committee was made up of mostly teachers, but we also did have some principals on the committee as well. And as I share with you, we received 14 submissions. 3 of those submissions were for elementary and 4 were for middle school. And I'll talk to you about that process and how we narrowed it down. So you see we had 3 finalists. 3 of the finalists, when we got to the point, so keep in mind, when you have the RFP, you have a piece of paper, you have a rubric. And then you determine the finalists from those 14 submissions. Then you actually get the material. When you get the material, you can see the actual content and the resources. And when we looked at one of our resources, it was clear that it did not align to our GEOs, our Heggerty, and our foundations. And that is something that our teachers have been doing for years now, and we promised them we're not going to change, because remember, the data that we have, it is working. We're outperforming the state in those areas, in those lower grades, so we're not going to change that. So we had to actually remove one of our choices because we were not going to take that away from our teachers because they are doing phenomenal with that. Then when we have in the middle school, we have 4 choices. We debated, do we stay with a curriculum and say we have to do the same for elementary that we do for middle school? But then we thought about it. We need our teachers to be able to do what's best for them. Elementary and middle is different. So we have 2 different choices you're going to see, but it's what our teachers wanted. So these are just a couple of pictures from the vendors fair. The teachers actually got to go talk to the representatives and ask those questions and really look at the material. Along with that, the demo lessons that I spoke about. They could actually go in, teach lessons from the curriculum to see how it would actually be. And then as a school, they got together and really explored and looked at this and talked about it. So you're going to see next that teachers, we actually vote, the school voted and they actually did individual votes. So what were the recommendations? Our teachers actually voted for wit and wisdom at the elementary level, our teachers and principals. And you see here, Wit and Wisdom received 66%, almost 67% of the vote there from our elementary. And then when you look across with the next slide, you're going to see across multiple spans, look at that, Wit and Wisdom is what our teachers wanted in elementary. And I will say that Great Minds is also the same company that does Eureka or math. So the way the lessons are set up, they align for the reading and math. So our teachers really, I think, from what I've heard, really like that aspect of this curriculum as well. So middle school, when we did the first vote in middle school, they were tied. We had McGraw-Hill and HMH. Then you go to the second choice, and you will see from the next slide, it's easier to see that 80% of our teachers got their first or their second choice with middle school. So we're really happy about how invested our teachers became with this process and how they actually got what they wanted. So why these two curriculums? Why these two? And I just want to take a moment to show you our nation report card, our ed reports. This is how any quality curriculum in our country is measured. As you can see, both of these curriculums are green. They have extremely high marks. We're very proud of that because this is the nation's report card, and they assess curriculums across the country, and these are two of the top. So with these two curriculums, in elementary and middle school, they're actually knowledge-building curriculums, and thematic units is what we call in the middle school. So they're building knowledge in those. So think by teaching fiction and nonfiction, or informational text and literature. So if I'm learning about frogs, I might be learning about a frog's true habitat and actually having informational text. And then I might be reading a text or a novel that has a literature piece that incorporates frogs. I'm digging deep into that. And then I'm actually able to take the writing, and we're doing writing with that. I'm taking the device. It's just exciting because it really is. They're really great curriculums, and for our teachers and students to be able to get this quality in their hands and have this resource is exciting. So this is just some research from Forbes Leadership, that they did a study with curriculums to this quality. When you do these knowledge-based curriculums, they took and looked at kindergartners to fourth grade, and what they found out that kindergartners, even in lower income, if they stuck with this curriculum in fourth grade, they outscored higher income students. So this is the power of actually giving a quality curriculum and sticking with it. And that's what we're telling our teachers. We're going to stick with this and train them and give them the resources they need. So you remember professional development was one of those key things that our teachers talked about. So we're going to begin there. We're going to do like this is, you wanted this, here it is, a welcome. This is the curriculum that you've chosen, just like a kickoff before they go, all right? And then over the summer, our curriculum specialists and some of our coaches will be digging, and the principals will be actually getting some training. And then on August 23rd, when we have our professional development PD day for the district, these companies will be here training our teachers so they can have that. But that's not it, because we know PD is not effective if you give it one time. We're actually going to be doing some embedded coaching, where the coaches from these companies actually come to our schools, walk the buildings with our coaches and teachers, seeing their students and helping them to make this curriculum effective. It's called embedded coaching, and we've done it with our Eureka curriculum some this year, and it has been phenomenal. So we've listened to our teachers about the best way to provide professional development. So transparency for our families. With each unit, our families will actually receive information. These are the things that your kids are going to be learning in the unit, as well as questions they can ask to help at home. Remember, parents are our partners. This will be sent home. We're also working to have this put on our webpage, front and center. We want this front and center with our parents because we've heard our parents, they want to partner with us. So we need to give them those tools and those resources. We're also going to have virtual meeting to let our parents look at these curriculums and 2 face-to-face meetings where they can come and see as well. So costs. Our first year cost, of course, is the highest cost because we're actually purchasing all of the texts and the consumables and the PD. So you'll see here the first year costs. And after the first year, and this is the PD that I spoke of and the consumables, because for the first time, our students are going to have these workbooks where they can annotate, dig in this text, and really manipulate the text. That's going to be a game changer for our students and teachers. But after each year, we're going to have to replace that cost. So that's what you see there. And we've got our elementary company to say this is where this cost will be. Of course, our numbers could be flexible because of the numbers of students. With our middle school company, we actually were fortunate enough for them to say, we will guarantee that we'll replace these. And if our costs increase, or if we perfect our product, because of course, there's nothing perfect and they continue to change and build and become better, that it still will be no cost to us. So even our middle school students too, they will be having consumables each year as well. Now keep in mind, along with the consumables, there is the online component. And the online component comes with support for our teachers and our students with the writing. And I think it's important to note that a lot of the online components, when we think about online instruction and components with any of our curriculum, our teachers have power and control where they can often stop our students if they need them to bring their eyes back on them. So that is something that we're going to have. K-8, we're going to have the consumables, the text, and the online components, and the parents can actually log in with their students and see the resource as well. Any questions?
Have any questions, board members? Ms. Mason?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you for presenting this. And 2 of my favorite things about this are the text in hand and the fact that we are providing all of this information for parents in multiple languages.
Yes, I forgot that part. Thank you so much, Ms. Mason.
Ms. Barnhart?
And I want to just re-highlight, I mean, when I met with the coaches, it was a great session. I could stay there all day talking about it. But the paragraph in the article that she sent, it was talking specifically about how across socioeconomic classes, our students were successful and showed different results. And how this is done in the curriculum was they have intentional scaffolding. So it's already prepped for accessibility for our multilanguage kids, for our AIG students, for our kids who are behind and need a reteach lesson, and different accommodations for EC students as well. But one of the things, and I don't think you mentioned it here, but I want to reiterate to the public, is we know no curriculum is perfect. And so talk to me about how we're going to tap into our staff who are showing that they're highly effective in different demographics and how we can, capture their knowledge and spread it across the district.
Right. So, and thank you for that question. So when we were looking at the curriculum, we asked teachers for their positive and their negatives because there is no curriculum that's perfect. So we will be working with our teams will be working to adapt and make sure this curriculum fits our new Hanover County. So our teachers will be our curriculum specialists and teachers will be working with these companies to do the changes and the things that we need to do, if any, which we know there will be some because we're going to tailor it to our district. So they'll be working over the summer to make sure that it is a rollout for our teachers here in New Hanover County, because you're talking about companies that they're across our state, but they're across our nation. And we want to make sure this is easy for our teachers, and it is based on what we do in New Hanover County
Any
and
other
at our
questions?
pacing level.
Ms.
So
Crable?
this, it's a comment and a question. So I was very impressed with the presentation that you gave each of us on how you did your choices. One of the things that I wanted to just ask, so that anybody listening who had asked me this question, and one thing that I was very impressed about was when I asked about McGraw-Hill, for the elementary, and the intentional decision, because somebody or many had the foresight to look at how it fit in with work we'd already done. So could you explain a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, so McGraw-Hill, and just to make everybody, that is the third curriculum that we had to mark out at the elementary level. So currently in our district, we do GEOs, Foundation, and Haggerty for our students for those phonics and just basic foundational skills. That is something that we are leading our state in, and our teachers have been doing a great job. When we actually looked at this curriculum and had it in our hand and actually talked to the representative, I actually know and she was honest about it would be a hard fit, and it would be different, and our teachers would have to do something different if we adopted that curriculum. So we decided we could not put that in front of our teachers because they've been doing this the entire time. And that is one of the things that we said. Because the teachers wanted to adopt a new curriculum. I'm sure I've told most of you the story how that's one of the first things they've been asking. But they did not want to lose those things. So we had to remove that because that is a stapler in our district, and we're doing it well, and we're doing it better than the state.
Thank you.
Ms. Barnhart? Ms. Bradford?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt this new 5-year plan for core curriculum as it's been presented.
A second? I know you have to say Barnhart one time, but another. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
And the last thing I'll say is I have to say a special shout out, or as they say, to Dr. DeWalt, Mrs. Maureen Hill, and Sarah Jelinsky. These ladies have worked hard on this along with the team, and I just want to recognize them, and I appreciate all the work they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next item on our schedule is the Board of Education Development / Training, 15 minutes. Ms. Crable brought that up.
Yes, so before we get into that, it is 11 o'clock, and I am willing to postpone this discussion, for 15 minutes. But I'd also like to ask again because I think it's important for us to really decide what we want to take in. But I think that we need to hold off on our legal services discussion, because by the time we get to that, it's going to be 30 minutes. And it's going to be 11:30 before we talk about probably one of the most important things we need to talk about tonight other than budget. So I'd like to make a motion to change the agenda, to take off the Board of Education Development and Training and Legal Services and postpone them to either a special meeting as soon as possible or to the next meeting.
Okay.
Actually, postpone legal services to a special meeting as soon as possible, and I can hold off on training until the June meeting.
So let's take one at a time. Let's do the Board of Education Development and Training. Would you make a motion to postpone
Well,
that?
I'd kind of like to do them together, because I think that right there takes off at least 30 minutes together, 35 minutes. So I'd like to do it as a package.
Okay, so your motion is to postpone the Board of Education Development Training until later.
June would be fine.
June, and then also the legal services to a meeting very soon.
A meeting very soon, yes.
Okay, that's your motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Walker seconds. Is there any more discussion? Anyone? No? Giving chance? No? Ms. Bowie, would you call the roll on that, please?
Mr. Wildebohr,
No.
Ms. Barnhart,
No.
Ms. Craybill?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
No.
Ms. Bradford?
No.
That's defeated 4-3.
All right, I'll make a second motion. I will go ahead and take off the leadership training to take one for the team because it is 11 o'clock and we need to be fresh to talk about what we need to do to make ourselves better.
Okay, so there's a motion to postpone the Board of Education
Second.
training. Second by Ms. Bradford. Any discussion? I'm going to take a shot. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. We'll move on to the county budget request for fiscal year 23-24, 15 minutes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before you have our county budget request. This is the same information, just bringing forward to this meeting. We had a discussion and a presentation at the April board meeting. So the total request of the county is $3.3 million, and that's based on enrollment of 27,500, which includes the charter schools, as we discussed before. That revenue is going to go, that additional revenue will go towards increase in employee compensation, the 4% increase for the raise, and retirement and insurance rate increases. And that revenue will also go towards helping additional costs that we are projecting based on utility rates and insurance liability rates going up. And then, of course, the charter school payments. Those are expected to increase too based on charter school enrollment. So that's what makes up that $3.3 million that we discussed in April. And then also along with the county request, that is the operating request. We also have the capital request. And it's right much higher than in the past, as we had talked about. We had some really large projects that we decided to include in our request this year. So it actually brings our request to $14.7 million. Normally it's around $4.6 million, but we had an additional, I think it was about let's see, I have that in here. Additional $9.9 million compared to previous year. Yep, this is a summary of the request, as you can see here. In addition to those items, we are asking for it's not a change as far as an increase, but for the county to continue funding our scholarships that they've been so generous to provide the past couple of years, and along with the pre-K original and the expansion grant we received last year. So that's just a continuation ask. So at this time, I would just ask for the board to approve the recommendation as presented, and then I would be able to share that with the county tomorrow. Hopefully.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Barnhart first. After the second, is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none. All in favor, please?
Mr. Board.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Grable.
So in this budget that we're seeing, where do we look to find, and I couldn't find that when I was looking at these handouts, where do we look to find some of the things that we had talked about before about in our different pillars for the strategic plan and how the finances laid out for the academic performance, for equity, for school safety? Is there a place to see it laid out that way so we can see how that's laid out?
I do not have that in these documents. I can bring something back that will provide that information of how it aligns to the strategic plan. But it's not included in these documents. And in April, we were just going through the changes. I didn't tie that to different sections of the strategic plan, but of course that was part of our discussion, so I can bring that back if you'd like.
Well, I don't want to hold up because I know we have to get this to the county commissioners as soon as possible, and the board doesn't seem to be amenable to having a special meeting to discuss things. So does anybody else share that concern that to see it tied, or just go with what no? All right, I'm fine.
I would say that it would be great if we could see that, but I mean, I don't know that we
After
want to
the
hold a
fact.
thing.
Yeah, I do plan to bring, so this is just our county request. So it'll go to the county, and the county will have their hearing, and then they'll let us know what their appropriation would be. I am hoping to be able to bring to the June board meeting the actual budget resolution, and I think it would be appropriate, if it's okay with the board, to bring that document at that time, because that's when you would actually approve the budget resolution for next year.
Okay, that
That's
would be
okay.
fine. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, a first and second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. Next on our agenda is a resolution to request Attorney General Josh Stein to release SBI findings.
I move we postpone that due to legal advice. Is that the terminology?
Okay, we have a motion to postpone.
I
Maybe we'll second that. Let me get my sheet here. Mason first and Ms. Craybill seconds.
Can I amend that to
You can try
a
to.
specific called meeting?
Yeah.
In the immediate future?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't say that. It's-
Would you like to amend?
Yes.
You amend your motion?
I will amend it to a meeting that we will be setting up within the next 24 hours.
Okay,
Yes.
we're setting
Is
it-
that
So the motion is to postpone the discussion of making a resolution until after we have a special called meeting. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay,
thank
I
you.
will second that.
Okay, okay. We have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Craybill.
Do we have to make this part of the motion that we want to be able to take action?
Mr. Weber, would you help us with that, please?
So that's at the board's discretion, how much detail you want to put in the motion. Another option would be to make a motion to postpone and then with direction to the chair to work with staff to schedule as soon as possible, including setting the agenda.
Get that? Do you want to re-amend your?
Can I just say what he said?
Yes.
Because I don't recall all of that, I'm sorry.
Repeat it again, Jason, so I can second it.
Yeah. Well, it's your motion. So,
Yes, I would like to
but
make
you,
that
the
motion,
board,
yes.
Help me make a motion that we
Help me
can,
make the motion, it's 11:30.
board can put as much or as little detail as it wants. If you want to make a motion to postpone and to direct your chair to work with staff on scheduling as soon as possible,
Okay.
including setting the agenda, that could also
11:30, I
work.
need direction.
You do need direction. I'm going to make a motion to postpone the discussion and direct the, oh my lord, the chair
superintendent.
and the superintendent to set up a meeting as soon as possible to discuss it.
You still second
I
that?
will second all of that,
Any
yes.
discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Passes 6-1. Okay, next on our discussion topics are legal services. Ms. Sutton?
I'd like to provide just a brief review of the legal services procedures that we went through to get to where we are tonight. So on March 27th, the board actually reviewed a request for qualifications and established the legal review committee. On March 10th, we advertised our request for qualifications, so that was published to request submissions for proposals. Then on March 30th, the proposal deadline for submissions, where we collected all the information from the 3 vendors that provided proposals. On April the 3rd, the legal review committee actually came together and reviewed those proposals. And then on the 24th, we had the The 3 firms selected came and provided presentations to the board, and the board had opportunities to ask questions at that time. And then we also had some follow-up questions that came either after or during the presentations from the board members. And on April 27th and 28th, I received that information and then provided the responses that I received to the board. And then here we are today to have the discussion and hopefully make that selection. So I just wanted to just take a minute to go through the process that was used to get to where we are tonight. Thank you.
What is the will of the board? Yes, ma'am?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we go with the Vogel Law Firm as our attorney firm on the retainer payment plan.
We have a motion from Ms. Bradford. Is there a second?
I second.
Mason seconds. Is there discussion?
Oh, yes. There's a lot of discussion to be had about this motion.
Ms. Walker?
I guess I can get called on. First of all, I was part of that qualifications team, and it didn't seem to me that that made any difference whatsoever, because this is the least qualified firm out of the 3. And so I don't understand why that's not even under consideration right now. I also know that this particular firm has had bias from the very beginning from a particular board member, Mr. Chair. I know that we are getting inundated with emails from people, including some prominent people, to lean on us to pick the most conservative firm. And I know a call to action was made last week to do so. I also know that a board member has reached out to one firm and one firm only to get follow-up questions, and that was not provided to the rest of the firms. So I have other concerns, which I emailed you guys last night about. One specifically was that I did not feel like one firm was honest with us, this particular firm. I watched the Cabarrus County board meetings, and I watched it last week, and I watched them last night. This firm was given 120 days in January. And so I know from all the research, and I've spoken with board members from Cabarrus County as well. So I just feel like I don't think this is the way for us to start. I don't think this particular firm is, based on my scoring, which was absolutely neutral. It was not based on whether I liked them or preferred them. It was based on qualifications. And that has to mean something with this process. We have a decent-sized district that needs servicing properly, and I just do not think that Vogel will be the firm that we need to pick.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Anyone else? Ms. Barnhill? Barnhart?
I guess it's kind of a question, would you feel comfortable with having a caveat in the event of our district needing more support of the workload, to have that option to be brought forth to the board to extend services for a specialized interest, i.e., I know bonds and forfeitures are something that we utilize in special education, things like that. Just out of curiosity, like if you're worried about the workload, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, we'll get that.
I have a problem because we had a committee, and I don't know what value this committee is supposed to hold. All I know is it was a serious process when I was doing it. It was public record that I did it, and I did it based on the qualifications minimum that this district needed. So I don't feel, and that will reflect in the scores and the comments that I have in my scores, but also the fact that I asked some very important questions the other week, and I did not get honest answers, and I don't think that is the way to set a law firm for this district. Is not the professional way to do it. And I did my homework, I did my research, I checked my references, I asked appropriate questions. I was accused of calling them liars, and I asked a simple question. That's all I did. So I don't think that's to answer your question, Ms. Barnard, I don't think that at this point that factors into this, because I do not believe this firm is qualified to represent this district.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak? Ms. Craybill?
Yes, so, number one, talking about costs, they told us that they only do a retainer, and we look at the $12,000 a month just for coming to our meetings, then that's $144,000. And that means that we're going to have to reach out to another law firm to help us with our special counsel. So I would like, I would like to, let me finish. So then, and if we did the super duper rate of $22,500 for board council and day-to-day schools, that's a minimum of $270,000. And we're sitting here balking that we're paying, too much for our legal fees right now, $264,000 or $300,000. So I just wanted to point that part out. That, and I did, so along those lines, I would like to hear from, if I may, Dr. Powell, from our senior staff on how they use legal services in their day-to-day operations. So that we can get just sort of a gist at the $235 an hour rate, or the $175. They weren't really clear on who's the partner and who's the associate because they've merged 3 companies. So I had questions about how that works, but may I ask that question of your staff? Okay. So one area that is very important and where I think that we use the services a lot is in our special ed department. And the Vogel does not have special ed resources. I couldn't find anywhere on there where on anybody's resume. All they did was say they had it, but I couldn't find any demonstrated. So could you talk to us a little bit about that? And I would like to do that for each person, Mr. Woodward, so I don't need to raise my hand. Thank you.
So I don't have a specific information about that firm. I know how I utilize.
I mean, how do you utilize
Okay.
Our current legal counsel
Right.
and or other legal counsel?
Okay. Okay, so specifically in the area of special education, there are, whether it's a request for records to be sent to another legal counsel, so the legal counsel of family, then we always utilize our general counsel or in-house attorney or special ed attorney to review those records as well. Anytime we have a student record request that is coming from either a subpoena or from another party, we have them review those, and then we create that letter. There's a letter of notice regarding FERPA notice. Routinely seeking direction on either subpoenas for staff to appear in court. That's not necessarily just special education. That occurs a lot with counselors and social workers as well. Our staff are subpoenaed for, different domestic or custody matters, custody agreements. No two are written the same, with the same language, and ensuring that we are complying with what the agreement is signed by a judge. Different student records matters. It's for me, it's definitely weekly, if not daily.
Routinely, we use them for evaluating contracts and giving some feedback on wording in contracts, and then also occasionally for bidding requirements to make sure that we're doing those things properly and meeting all federal guidelines associated with that.
Sure. We use them for contracting for construction. That could be developing or clarifying standard contracts, working through construction disputes, possibly even termination mitigation. We also use legal services for anything dealing with real property, whether that's the purchase of or sale of property, easements, right-of-ways, and then we use them for leases, MOUs, MOAs, and anything that operations would be associated with.
And do you use them for child nutrition at all?
Very rarely. That's normally not what they're involved in.
Okay. Ms. Brinson?
So yes, we use their services a lot for the contract review, much as other people have spoken, both yearly contracts and then multi-year contracts when we do those. Also lately, in the process that we've been doing data sharing agreements to make sure that the vendors that we do business with and get our student data, we have agreement with them as far as the privacy of our student information. So we've been working with a lot for that lately.
Basically the same thing for contracts, MOUs. Actually, when have to look at some different policies and language for that.
We primarily use them for processing public records requests, identifying any necessary redaction, and then turning over those records.
And along with what everyone said about MOUs, agreements with universities, we pass those through legal. And then also, a lot of times there's a sounding board for employee relations issues. We will make sure that I'm following policy, want to make sure that we're following general statute. And then some things that reach to termination, appeal, things like that always involve the attorneys as well.
Same thing, MOUs, contracts, and just an extra layer of due diligence when I'm just investigating anything related to racial, ethnic bullying.
You, Ms. Grable, anyone else? Mr. McManus?
We're going to give up a firm whose specialty, their whole focus is the educational arena. And I believe they have 40 of them, and that's what they do across the entire state. We've had the firm, I know that our attorney also goes back and refers to a lot of their others to deal with what we have to deal with on a daily basis. I don't think the Fogle has the numbers to give us the accessibility and the time. They're in Charlotte, and there are 4 of them, at least that's, if I remember correctly. And I know that they get a lot of phone calls during the day, and they have to be accessible immediately, particularly when it comes to HR, and I know some of the exceptional arenas. And so whether we like a present individual or the firm, they have such a knowledge base of all of the things that are going on, whether we agree or not. We're being sued. We are defending ourselves. We're things that go on that no one else knows about in closed session. We can't discuss them. We're going to give up someone who has all, and the firm who has how many years, 2 years of that knowledge? And we're going to start with someone who doesn't know one thing in their defense. And they're going to have to respond, and they're going to have to make some quick decisions. And if the accuracy is not there, the background, the understanding of what has happened and what's taken place, we're going to pay the piper. And so that's my rationale for not supporting. There are only 4, the accessibility, their background. And we're in the midst of so much. I just can't believe that we would change in the middle of the stream when we know we need it so badly.
I'm gonna throw my 2 cents in here. Thank you, Mr. McManus, first off.
You're welcome, Mr. Wardemore.
I'll be honest, I'm not thrilled about any group, to be honest, and that's one thing I have to really focus on is that we're looking at law firms. We're not looking at individuals. I think Mr. Weber is doing a fine job. I don't have a problem with that. But I just go back to the statements that I think we've all forgotten about. Things like schools don't have a fiduciary responsibility to keep students safe. Wow, that hurts me. I mean, I looked it up today. I should have memorized it. General Statute 115C 105.45 says the exact opposite. That to me paints us all in a really bad light. That was not Mr. Weber, but that's his law firm. The inability that we have when we ask questions that we can't get answers to, because, and I know the board conflicts of interest keep coming up. That's not what it is, but I mean that's still a concern because we have to pay a whole bunch of money to another law firm to answer those questions. So those are some concerns. I'm not over the top about any any one of the three groups, to be honest. I'm going to say this little story I'm going to say, and then I'm going to let somebody else speak. But, this weekend, I think you all know my daughter got married. One little girl came up and she was like, oh, I have a boyfriend. He's okay. He's not, and I hate to settle in any case. But, those are my concerns with our current law firm. So, Ms. Crable had her hand up. Yes, ma'am.
So I got a couple things, and I'm going to do a couple in a row so that in case you say we only allowed 2 times, I need to get them all in.
Get them in.
So number one, I'm going to ask Ashley, when I'm done, if she could just clarify and confirm for me one more time about the public records requests and the information that you've given us on our legal expenses, that those were for our legal expenses for general counsel and day-to-day, and not for any of the litigation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think that that's something that's a misnomer, and that was definitely misquoted by Vogel when he was talking about that kind of stuff. Since the motion on the floor is to talk about Vogel, then I wanted to call out, I checked out the resume he provided for us. I looked on his LinkedIn page and his Facebook page, and he doesn't have the only higher education, the only education experience he has is representing a education organization called Strategic Education, which is basically a lobbying group for higher education and financial aid and student financial aid and loans. So he doesn't have, I'm concerned that they don't have the special education. They're not even an education law firm. They're calling themselves that. And each one of them does little bits and pieces here and there. I just think that we're doing ourselves a disservice, for our whole organization on that. And then I am very disturbed that Mr. Vogel was less than forthright with us on their status with Cabarrus County. And we've had a chance to watch 2 of their meetings. There was a gentleman named Mr. Ken White, no, it's not Ken White, it's Jay White. And so he does all the talking at all the Cabarrus meetings that I've watched. So I'm wondering, who is this guy and why doesn't Mr. Vogel even, ever, speak up? And I'm just afraid we're going to get into some bad lawyering and bad advice. Their whole paper that they gave us was how they were going to insert themselves into our business and not advise us on our business. So those were kind of things. So before we were to use Mr. Willoward's words, which I appreciate, before we would settle for this council that I believe is very politically motivated, because all the emails I've gotten have been from fellow Republican friends who have gotten an email that says do this. We got an email from a former elected official that called us liberals. And so why are we talking liberals, and why are we having the GOP putting out a call to action, giving constituents words to say? We shouldn't be politicizing our legal counsel. So I would like to, in that vein, is if this board is leaning towards going with Vogel, a group that is substandard for our needs, they may be fine for something smaller. But I would like to amend that motion that we consider in-house general counsel, and then do a pay-as-you-go with another law firm or law firms that can help us with all of those needs that everyone over there said before we would pick a company that is not qualified. So my motion would be to go with, rather than picking Vogel, to go just because everybody's got the notes. Hold on, let me back. Before I can even make that vote, I would like to hear from Ms. Walker and Ms. Bradford on, I've seen their notes. These are my notes. I went through and matched up qualifications, and I don't see any notes. Ms. Bradford said in one, I like them. Well, I like Jason. So, but does that make him, his company the most qualified? No, so we have to really look at qualifications and not my personal opinion. So before I make that motion, I would like to hear from Ms. Walker and Ms. Bradford as to why they rated the numbers that they did. Because Vogel comes in last, and a distinct last, 56 out of 75, versus other groups that came in 72 out of 75, and I forget what the Pointers rule was, like 68 out of 75. So Vogel is by far the lowest and the least qualified, and yet we're going to pick them. So can I hear from,
Well, if they would like to speak to it later on, but that's your second time to speak, so.
well, I'm going to come back and make the motion then.
Okay, go ahead and make your motion.
No, I don't want to make the motion.
I haven't had
I'm
my
not gonna-
second
I'm
chance.
not gonna allow-
I will make the
yeah.
motion to go to in-house counsel with pay-as-you-go for special services. With the, no, but we would have to, because there's no way we can hire one person that can handle all of those special things that they have. That person does not exist.
Okay, so say your motion one more time so we're all
My
sure.
motion is to go with in-house counsel and pay-as-you-go for special counsel.
For special needs.
Special
Counsel,
counsel, which
okay.
means Title IX, special ed,
okay.
operations, construction, HR, redaction services, all that,
Okay.
all those special things.
We have a first, we have a motion, we have a second. We hear a second. Okay? Hearing none, we'll carry on.
I would like to have my second chance. I was
Yes,
waiting.
Ms. Walker, I'm sorry.
This is just the facts. We did this committee based on the qualifications. I read very clearly what it said. And we had 3 firms to choose from to score, and they did not get the best. They were the lowest scoring firm. And if we're going to pick the lowest scoring firm just based on someone's like or a particular party's like, I think that does this district a disservice. And I don't know how we could use these people take these people seriously, because I took my job seriously when I did it. And the things I'm finding out afterwards have made me feel like I feel a little set up. I'm going to be honest with you. Because if there's a 4 vote for this firm based on nothing but liking something and not on qualifications, this is not the way the process is done. And I don't even know why we did this to begin with. So that's the last thing I'm going to say. I am against this, very vehemently against this, based on qualifications alone. Not whether I like him, them, or whatever. Because when I did this, I didn't know who they were. I just saw their paper. And we have a baseline for a reason, and they did not cut it. So,
Ms. Bradford?
Let me list a couple of things that came off the Vogel perspective, whatever it's called. Managing attorney for 4 years, U.S. Department of Education, second highest law lawyer in the government, U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, U.S. House of Representatives, Counsel to the Judiciary Committee, U.S. Federal Prosecutor Charlotte in fraud, General Counsel, Strategic Ed. I mean, their qualifications are impeccable, absolutely impeccable. To personally attack me because I like them, I did my homework after the fact. Today, we talked with Dr. Barnes about hiring. He talked about how they have 3 different meetings with people before we hire them just to be teachers and principals and vice principals in our school. I'm used to that kind of vetting process. That was the first meeting. I did not feel well. I did not understand the process, so crucify me over it. I believe this is the most qualified. I talked to a member of the Cabarrus County Board of Education this morning, and she said Vogel is highly qualified. She said, with the problems that you've told me that you have in your school district, this is the firm. These 4 people that we saw in person is a party of 6. I asked a specific question. Can you handle the volume of what we need? The answer was unequivocally yes. I don't find lawyers in public meetings to be prone to lying. They have professional standards where they can be disbarred for that. The presentation we just heard from Ms. Varnum, Discipline, and EC is one additional cause to be changing attorney firms. We need a firm that will do the job, this kind of training that we need for our district to keep us from having all these EC lawsuits. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome. We are stagnant. We need change. We have all these lawsuits. We have all these issues. We need fresh eyes. We need fresh attorneys. These are highly qualified attorneys. Some of the best attorneys in the state are with this group. To say that they are unqualified is ludicrous. We need change. This is the best firm to bring a fresh approach to what we're doing. They said they could get up to speed quickly. So I reiterate, this is the firm for us.
Bill, you've spoken twice. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, respectfully.
Yes, ma'am.
I need to present some information to our board that refutes what Ms. Bradford just said.
Unfortunately, you've spoken twice by Robert's rules.
Everybody go to
Excuse
Mr.
me.
Vogel's LinkedIn.
Excuse me.
Go to
Ms. Craybill, you're out of order. It's enough.
I'm allowed to ask.
You're allowed to speak twice. You've spoken
Go
twice.
to the LinkedIn page and look at his background, because it's not what he purports.
You continue. Thank you.
Kick me out.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay, if not, we'll call the question. Yes, ma'am?
Real quick with the subcommittee, there was, I think it was Ms. Crable earlier this year talking about subcommittees are not allowed to speak on behalf of the board. And so while I appreciate, I thought we might have more than 3 people apply personally. So I thought there might be a need for having a vetting process to streamline, as we're here for a long meeting, but to streamline the process with that. And so while I respect and understand what you're saying, all of us are able to give our input on these decisions. And I hear the concern for being the workload. And so I would be open to saying if this entity, a new fresh set of eyes for some of the situations that we're dealing with, I don't think is a bad idea personally. But if this entity is not able to handle the workload that we have, then I think we should leave room for us to continue to respond to the needs of our school. And so I'm not saying that they can't. I'm just saying if that issue arises, then it should be able to be brought to us so that we can respond to it appropriately.
All right. If there's no more discussion, we will carry on with the vote. It will be a roll call vote. This, again, the motion is by Ms. Bradford, excuse me, board members, excuse me. At this point, we are going to have a roll call vote. Ms. Bradford's motion was to go with the Vogel Law Firm. Ms. Bowie?
Ms. Barnhart. Ms. Craybill.
No, and no, no, no.
Ms. Walker.
Absolutely not.
Ms. McManus.
No.
Ms. Mason.
Yes.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
And Mr. Wildebohr.
Yes. Passes 4-3. Carry on. Committee reports. Legion Stadium Committee, Ms. Walker's left, yes? Yes, sir.
Lay aside everything for the rest of the night. Not important. It's almost midnight. We have ladies driving home at midnight,
Absolutely.
and I don't think this is important.
Was that a move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
Ma'am.
I second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned.
Mr. Sutton, would you approach the dais, please?